We're going to start tonight by looking at a good old monster movie, and this is Godzilla Minus One. And in Godzilla Minus One, it's Japan in 1945, and Koichi, a cowardly, or as some might say, sensible kamikaze pilot, has landed his plane on Odo Island to repair it. But then the garrison is attacked by a fearsome creature that the locals call Godzilla. Here's a clip.
我々しかこの国の未来を切り開くことはできない。
あの怪物の生態は未知のことが多すぎて。
So that's Godzilla, and I think as Dan is new on the block, he should get the honours of being the first to comment on his views about Godzilla.
So I have been a Godzilla fan for a very, very long time. I grew up with watching a lot of them on VHS. And whenever Scott writes a review, because I follow him on Facebook, and he writes a Godzilla review, I'm always at loggerheads with him because I always love them. I've seen all of them from the 1954 film through the Heisei, the Showa, Heisei, Millennium, the Legendary Verse, the Roland Emmerich 1998 film. I think this is the best Godzilla film by quite some distance. It used to be, for me, the best, in my opinion, was Gareth Edwards' 2014 reboot that he did for Warner Brothers. The thing that this film gets for me so right is that what so other monster movies forget is that balance between characterization and destruction. And the way that the director has made this film, he's clearly owing a debt to the Ishiro Honda film from 1954. There's also quite a lot of Jaws in there as well, and Jaws is my favorite film. So anytime there's any kind of visual or audio reference to Jaws, I'll be all on it. But it's the thing that's so great about it, not just the destruction scenes, which are incredible, but the emotional impact of the film, I think, is what really keeps Godzilla Minus One in the very, very high ranks of the series. When I saw the film in the cinema, it was the first time I'd been to the cinema in over 2 years. So I was very, very much looking forward to seeing the film in the cinema, and it lived up to everything I could have wanted and so much more. And as soon as I saw the film, it shot to my top favourite film of the year. It overtook Talk to Me, which was my favourite film up until that point. I thought it was absolutely brilliant, and I think even people who don't know the mythology of Godzilla or really care about it, I'm looking at you, Scott, I'm looking at you, I'm really hoping that people get something from this, because I think this is an absolutely spectacular monster movie that does everything right that so many other American films have tried to do and failed quite badly.
Very good. Okay. An expert on the panel. That's good. Scott, as you're not an expert on Godzilla, what did you make of it?
Yeah, so as Dan has commented, in the past, I have not been a great fan of Godzilla films. The character itself, I find quite frustrating, and the movies have generally been quite boring. I don't think the ones that I've seen have served the human characters very well, which I feel like you need to balance the monster stuff with the human stuff. And so, yeah, I've been very disappointed so far. I watched Godzilla Minus One, and I absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
So for me, exactly. There we go. I've been converted. I thought that this one did get the balance right. So the monster stuff with going around the cities, destroying it, everything getting blown up, it was all really good. The action worked for what it was. But I love this film because it got the human stuff right. We've got our lead character who is facing shame and trauma. There's a lot of guilt going on there. This is set in just after World War II, and we see that families are broken, people are broken, and we get to see people find families and get that emotional connection with people uniting in terrible situations. And it made me just feel for the character, and I cared about him and the people around him as well. He has some friends that are smart and also some good comic relief in there as well. And so that brought stakes. A lot of these other films, I didn't care about the humans, so I didn't really care what happened to them. This one, I cared about the people, and so when there was an actual threat, it made me feel nervous, and I wanted to know how they were going to get through it. On top of that, a lot of this film is about building up how the people are going to stop Godzilla. And I thought it was really clever the way they took their time, but it never got boring. It was like a heist movie in a way, where you see sometimes they'll build their way through what they're going to do before they eventually do it. And I felt like they did that a lot of the time in this movie. As Dan says, there is references to other things like Jaws. I got a little bit of Grave of the Fireflies in there a little bit too. So for me, yeah, I was very surprised. The score, it's quite a classic score from some of the older movies that Dan's a fan of. I felt it sort of incorporated that style of music, which I think worked. The visuals were a bit hit and miss. Some of it was amazing. There were sometimes I was looking at some of the water being like, they could have done better with that. But
it's worth remembering. It's worth remembering that the budget of this film was $15 million, right?
Was it?
I
didn't realize it was that low.
$15 million. So I think what they did with the budget was pretty amazing, actually. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I didn't realize what the budget was. Keeping that in mind, that's very impressive then. Yeah. So despite my previous history with the character, this is a film that's converted me.
Good stuff. Emma, have you got anything to add?
I'm very much the same. I have watched every single one, absolutely love it, and quite honestly, it's probably where my love of all monster movies came from, having watched, all the originals. If you had told me going into this that this was in the original lineup of movies, I wouldn't have doubted you. I thought it worked really well. It just, everything about it just captured the look and feel of a classic Godzilla monster movie to me. And like you say, the actual backstory to characters, which you never get these days in monster movies, and I really appreciated the fact that you were getting them rebuilding their sort of home after the war, because it helped with the pace, which I have an issue with in a few films recently, where I just don't quite know the time span of things, and that bothers me. And this, it really helped it flow. Yeah, really enjoyed it.
It was really quite extraordinary, the length of time before you, from when you first saw Godzilla to the next time you had any monster in the film. And that was really quite extraordinary, I thought.
That's really keeping in with the tradition of old Godzilla movies, though.
Yeah,
you'd get a shot of him right at the beginning. Okay. Oh yeah, I mean even the case with Jaws or the host, Bong Joon-ho's film, you see the monster right at the beginning, and then you do have a good length of time before you see the monster again. So yeah, that's just movie monster magic 101, I think, really.
Okay, all right. Any more, Emma?
No, I think the guys summed it up really well. I just, I do love, just violent, nonsensical monster movies, but this really took me back to classic Godzilla, and just wonderful.
Good. Andy?
I mean, everybody summed it up beautifully. One of the frustrations of writing for a magazine like Sorted is a thing called deadlines. And I came out frustrated because I'd already submitted my top 10 of the year, an article about my top 10 of the year, and I wished I could have it back to include Godzilla because it shot straight into my top 10 of the year. I think the guys have summed it up beautifully. I love the characterizations, love the story, love the fact that there are those moments when we don't see Godzilla, but we're building and something good is coming. Love the references to Jaws and the other film that Scott mentioned there. I particularly enjoyed the score. I've downloaded it and listened to it through several times since I've seen the film. And I've always had a soft spot for Godzilla because he's that much nastier than, say, Kong. Kong is just too nice for a monster, whereas Godzilla is Godzilla, and I really loved it. Yeah, in my top 10 of the year.
Okay,
Awesome.
great. I mean, I normally absolutely hate these films. I will often not go and see a film about Godzilla or Kong or Transformers. I put them in the same boat, just vacuous, pointless characters fighting CGI creatures where there's no sense of peril or anything to do with them, let alone Kong versus Godzilla, which, what is the point? Who are you rooting for in that? For this one, I have to say I went in with a very negative attitude and got immediately turned around, just as you say, by the actual sense of character building and the actual way in which it actually built its story. I thought it was very, very clever, putting effectively the guilt of the Japanese about the war and then and about how useless Japanese bureaucracy was and how the people had to get together to actually try and come up with a solution. I thought that was all terrific. And
the political element was really good, particularly when they involved the Russians and given everything that had happened post-war. I thought that was brilliant storytelling, very good scripting, actually.
I thought it was.
You could almost think you were watching a real film, at times a documentary about a monster invading Japan. And it had that documentary feel like to it at times, which I thought was exceptionally good. Yeah,
good. And as you say, the Jaws references, I thought that boat chase near the beginning of the film,
best in the film.
I kept thinking of the orca and the three-barrel chase in Jaws, absolutely. And the music, the way in which the music and the use of slow-mo in the film, some of those scenes, some to complete silence, like towards the end of the film, I thought had such epic proportions to the film. I was just very, very surprised by it. My only criticism of the film was there was some variable use of extras in it. Some of the destruction of Ginza, you had loads and loads of people around, but at the beginning of the film where you had the battleship, there was about 10 crewmen lined up in a row who were kind of running from side to side like in the old Star Trek original series, right? As the monster attacked, these 10 people on the deck were going like this and this, and I thought that somewhat let the quality of the effects down to a degree. But that was my only criticism. I mean, scores on the doors. I gave this one an 8, but that's just because I don't give greater than 8 very often. Emma?
It's a 10 from me.
10.
I had no complaints.
Okay, 18. Andy?
9.
18. 27. Scott?
I'm a 9 as well.
36. And Dan?
And I'm a 10 as well. I just want to also say, not to give any spoilers, that beginning point on Odo Island, that was the Jurassic Park sequel I'd always wanted to see, and that we never got.
Yes. Yes. You're not wrong. So that's a total. Oh my word! This is going to challenge my maths tonight with 5. That is 40.
Oops.
Whoa, Andy, your camera.
Yeah, my camera's on there. Yeah,
Like
no
a
problem.
keyboard.
Was that a Godzilla attack? Yeah.
Something in the garden.
That is 46 divided by 5, which is 9.2, I believe, which is one of the highest scores we've had for quite a while, I think, for such a group of people. So that definitely makes Godzilla -1 a gigantic monster hit. Right, brilliant.